Welcome to From Betrayal to Breakthrough. I'm Dr. Debbie Silber, and today's guest is Karen Millon. Karen is an entrepreneur slash businesswoman with over 22 years of business experience whose divorce and a focus on healing with EMDR therapy changed her life back in 2013. So she decided to write a book, An Amazing Divorce, what you can do for yourself, for each other, and for your children to achieve it. And she hosts the podcast, The Heal In with Karen Millon podcast, with the goal to inspire the world to heal in order to achieve sustainable well-being. Have you ever heard of EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing? My next guest used EMDR to help her heal from her pain, and she's going to share more about it. It's actually something many people have tried to help them through their painful experiences with betrayal. So I'm bringing Karen onto the show to share more about EMDR and some other great ideas you're going to love. Here we go. Okay, everybody, we have my friend Karen Millon with us today, and she's going to be talking about EMDR. And if you haven't heard of that, I know I get so many questions about it. We brought the expert in who's going to be teaching us about EMDR, how it helped get her through her divorce, and so much more. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with, because I mentioned divorce. Was it, how long ago? What happened? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
So I was married for 13 years and together for 17 years with my ex-husband. We had grown very unhappy for about 7 years before we broke up. What had kept us together, which was a united vision and how we wanted to live our life, changed the time I became a mother. And we had so many differences. We did not enjoy spending time the same way, did not enjoy spending our disposable income the same way. We had different love languages. We were both very unhappy, but we had kids and we were both good people. He was a good man, a good father, a good provider. There's no other than being really unhappy and living lonely lives. We had no clear, danger or anything like that. So I had done a lot of therapy, maybe about 4 or 5 years before the breakup. We had couples therapy. I had a clear understanding of why I had married him and why I was unhappy and what I needed and what I deserved. And Debbie, out of the blue, on a business trip to Chicago, I met my soulmate, someone I wasn't looking for, nothing I had ever expected, and came home the very next day and told my ex-husband that we were done, that he deserved to be happy, that he wasn't happy, that I wasn't happy, that I wasn't sure if this was going to be the right person for me, but that I know that there was someone out there that could make me happy, that...
And you know what, Karen, I have to stop you there because I so respect that. There are so many people in the betrayal community where they're not told. It was sort of like that you were on the other side of this, realizing that your marriage sort of went as long as it can go, and to the extent that it was working for both of you. And then you met someone, and then you told your husband the next day. And I definitely do. I respect that. And I'm sure everybody listening does too, because that's fair. That happens. That's okay.
Yes.
It's when we're not told and then it's sneaky and deceptive. That's when it's a problem. So I just wanted to make sure I let you know that.
I was 100%. And it was funny because I was processing what had happened with him. And I said, it was completely out of the blue. It was someone who didn't look like my type at all. Older, balding, like nothing that I had ever expected. I described them to him. Everything what he was like and why I was drawn. And, the interesting thing and, sad in retrospect is that my ex was like, I hear you. This is a wake-up call for us. I let you down. I didn't hear you for 7 years or more. I took you for granted. You've told me this crystal clear, what you needed, what your complaints were, where you wanted me to change. and I let you down. I let the kids down. Please give me a chance. And the saddest thing was that I was done. The saddest thing, because I would have never wanted to do that. I would have never wanted to break my marriage and break my kids' heart. But it had been sort of 17 years of sort of unhappiness, and the last 3 years, and a clear understanding that we were both in our 40s. He was in his 50s. And what it would take for him to change would kill him. We'll put him in the spot that I was in if he had to compromise his entire life to make me happy. And it was things like he would wake up in the morning and go out till 3 p.m. and he wasn't an inside person, and I was an inside person. So I spent 17 years every morning alone, and he spent it alone, and things like that. And so, you know, what I did was sort of a focus on the healing journey, on grieving. You know, we both grieved. We both cried our eyes out. We both spent probably a month every night or every other night talking about what happened, what broke, what were our needs. I started doing EMDR therapy about a week after we had ended it or separated.
And I love also that you brought up grieving, because so often we think grieving is just saved for when we lose someone to death. And it's not. It's when a relationship, when we lose whatever it is, a relationship, an idea, something that we thought we were planning, expecting. So the grieving piece is really, really important. Was there a certain way that you did that, or something in particular that you tried?
So I think, Debbie, that's adamant is that, you know, when we lose someone, we go through the mourning period, the Shiva, the whatever we go through, where you honor the grieving process. You dress like you're sad, you cry your eyes out. And when a lot of people that I've known that have been divorced, they're like, okay, move on, one foot in front of the other, let's go, let's start dating, let's start going on. And that really works at a time. Like, you got to get up and keep going. But if you don't honor that month to sometimes 6 months of really a lot of sadness, you know, it's just like short-term pain for long-term pain. What we did, we cried a lot. I've been gifted to have read a lot of books about emotional intelligence when I became a mother 16 years ago, that I applied every day. So when he was sad or he said something sad, I'm like, yes, sweetie, sad. No one gets married to break up. The idea of Karen and Anthony for 17 years, our memories, we had a beach house, we had friends, we had, you know, like you had a home. That's done. And I help the kids grieve as well. You know, it's sad. Let's cry. I would help them cry. I would read them books about how sad it is. And you know, if it's cry, it is cry. It is sad, sweetie. Mommy and daddy are not in the same house. And that, I think, was really important, especially for my ex. And
that's so important too, because so often I think the kids are the ones so deeply affected, and they're not the ones getting the attention that they need. The focus is on mom and dad, but spending that time and effort and energy making sure the kids are okay. I mean, I'm sure nobody intentionally tries to not make sure the kids are okay, but that it was a big focus for you is really, really important.
It's huge. I was also blessed that I had my own business, and I literally took 3 months off. My partners were not very happy, but I was like, I was depressed in the mornings. I picked up the kids from school every single day at lunchtime, because one of their biggest issues is that it was really different, but we lived in a neighborhood where no one was divorced. So both my daughters, they were 8 and 6 at the time, didn't have anyone in their class that had been divorced, and which is a little bizarre with a 50% divorce rate, that it was so new. So they're like, Mommy, it's going to be embarrassing. And so I made sure that I was with them for the first month lunch, and we would go out and have a nice lunch and cry and be sad or be happy or talk about our action plans. And then I helped them process it with their friends as well. So we started having play dates, and I'm like, you know what? Mommy and Anthony are not living in the same house, but we're friends. You're going to see him around. You know, we're still having dinners together. We're just very good people who just don't want to live in the same house. So While I tell you that it was very hard the first month for them, uh, and it hurt them, it didn't break them. They became really good, resilient, happy kids that even just 6 months later, we would be having friends over for dinner, and I would hear my 6-year-old say, "Well, I know why Daddy and Mommy broke up. They had nothing in common, or they fought
Mm.
a lot, or Mommy was slamming doors." And like,
Hmm.
so that really helped. You had to focus on the kids and putting the
Right.
kids first.
It
Yeah.
sounds very intentional, like you were intentionally trying to make that work. So what happened? How did you notice you were healing?
So the other thing that happened was that from the first moment, I, mentioned to my husband that I would not ever be coming between him and my daughters. I wanted to make sure that he was a great present father. And so that really helped in sort of the amazing divorce, because we were super lucky to continue to spend time together, to walk the kids to school, to have dinner. So it wasn't a big transition for them. So, I mean, it was really hard. I think the first 2 months, I mean, we cried a lot. I developed like pains everywhere of the heartache of breaking someone, the heart of someone I loved. And that's when EMDR therapy, I was doing it twice a week,
Mhm.
because it was so intense. And my ex was seeing an EFT therapist, which is emotionally focused therapy, in a bit of an attempt to maybe regain our marriage.
Mhm.
But it was amazing in showing him what was missing, and to understand that we were not emotionally attached,
Mhm.
that we were two chips running a sail and going in different directions, that Debbie, we didn't sleep in the same bedroom for 7 years. We were
Yeah.
not kind of attached and in love.
Yeah.
We were just friends.
Yeah.
And so he, having that introspection and understanding, allowed him to come back to me and say, I let you down.
Mhm.
I take responsibility, and I'm going to make sure that this is the most amazing divorce that we can,
Wow.
given the situation.
That says a lot. So let's talk about EMDR. What's the process? What's it supposed to do? How does it work?
So EMDR is a method created by a New Yorker, Francine Shapiro, about 30 years ago. She sadly died last summer. I would have loved to meet her. And it 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 is very common and well known amongst the heavy trauma, the big trauma community, the veterans,
Mhm.
sexual assault. And it was a tool that has been researched for 30 years and proven to work at least 70% of the time with big T trauma, in the healing of trauma.
And
But
explain big T, little t trauma if you can.
yes, so trauma is anything that is sad that happened to us. And the ACE, which is the American or the Adverse Childhood Effects organization, has labeled 8 different types of trauma, which include uh, emotional neglect. So maybe mommy and daddy were around, but your mom was depressed or mentally ill or had an alcoholic problem and didn't give you the time and attention, didn't spend time with you, didn't hear you, didn't see you. Physical abuse. So you were hit, you got the belt, you were hit often. When something happens to you repeatedly with your entire childhood or twice a week, it's called complex trauma, where it's not just one effect. You had one bad car accident, you were sadly raped once. No, it's when something happens again and again. It's called complex trauma. Divorce is considered trauma. Growing up with parents with mental illness, alcoholism, losing a parent. So it's interesting because a lot of us, I think very few of us had a perfect childhood, despite of race, despite of income. I think trauma is one of the biggest equalizers. Despite of who you are, very few of us had a perfect childhood. So trauma affects all of us. And, I think a lot of us are really good at using band-aids, really good band-aids and bad band-aids. Like good band-aids are perhaps exercising a lot because it makes you feel like $1,000,000 and it's great. But if you don't heal what's under that, or you're sick or you have the flu or you sprain your ankle, you'll feel sad that day. So while exercise is number one and is an amazing coping mechanism that I rely on as well, healing that trauma that we faced, in my opinion, and it's one of the missions that I have, is crucial. So there's good band-aids and there's a lot of really highly successful people who work so much not to hear their pain, not to be alone, not to see that, right? We just keep ourselves busy, and we're just because we don't want to feel it.
Yeah, and this is actually what my first TEDx was about, how we desperately try to distract ourselves, because if we were to stop and listen and take a look, it unravels everything.
Right.
And I remember using this example of like holding a pebble, that if you let that pebble go, there's going to be an avalanche. And right. And so we use these food, drugs, alcohol,
Yes.
work, all these things
Yes.
to numb, avoid, distract ourselves from something that's really
That's what I
painful.
call the cheap band-aids is alcohol. Let's just get wasted. It feels great for 2 hours and then you get hungover.
Yeah.
So EMDR, Debbie, works to access your emotions, because I know I've seen you say, I hear you say, you got to feel it to heal it.
Face it, feel it, heal it.
You got to feel it to heal it. And so a lot of us, like Freud said, are experts at repressing and not feeling it. And you can go to therapy and talk about, my husband left me, he treated me this way, and you might cognitively understand what happened to you and cognitively understand your childhood. And for example, my dad worked too much. He was never around. I was emotionally neglected. And okay, that's why I married my ex-husband. And so I can understand it. But unless I go back there and feel it and cry it and see myself at 6 and 8 and 10 years old, feeling alone, being bored, being neglected, and crying it and reprocessing, is super hard to heal. So what EMDR does is called EMDR, is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And somehow Francine Shapiro understood that by having bilateral stimulation, so either you tap your shoulders, they do it online now with Zoom, back and forth, or there's machines where they tap you in your legs back and forth, or a therapist might go like that to you, or you're writing in your journal. Somehow that stimulation allows you to access the emotional part of your brain.
And
So
I
that,
remember even doing a program, this is when I was healing from my betrayal, and it was an online program, I don't remember the name, but where you would follow, there was like a little disc that would go from left to right in all these different ways, and you were supposed to follow it. And I didn't understand it, but and I say this all the time, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it doesn't work, or doesn't mean it's
Right.
not true. So just doing something like that, I didn't quite understand the reasoning, so I'm thrilled you're sharing it, but I know a lot of people
that
really
is
get a lot of
EMDR.
value. Yeah.
That is EMDR. So you go back and forth, and somehow it allows you to feel, and all those memories that you repress, it allows you to get there and feel the pain. And then at the same time, you have to do it with a trained therapist, which you have a safety. Because, for me was neglect. But if you've had something terrible that happened to you, sexual assault, sexual abuse, they do have a coping mechanism so that you have something that allows you to go back and feel safe. So the reprocessing side is when you're like, okay, and I've had many, many sessions over, maybe 30 sessions. And I went back and I remember how sad and how painful it was to be me. And I let the tears go out. Then you reprocess it, where you're like, okay, you felt it. And then you're like, okay, Karen, you're a 45-year-old woman now who you're seen, you're loved. I'm remarried, and I have an amazing marriage with someone who sees me and loves me. And what would you tell that 8-year-old Karen? Sweetie, your dad had epilepsy. Your dad tried the best he could. He loved you. He worked so hard to put you in private school. He was just never there for you, but you were worthy. So the one thing that EMDR works with, that a lot of men love working with it as well, is that unlike talk therapy, you don't even have to share your story, Debbie. You're because you're working with a negative emotion. So when you start a session, you go there and for example, one of my sessions is like, why did I marry someone I didn't love? I wasn't in love with. And or why did I, we actually lived together before getting married. He didn't hear me. I would say I don't want to go to Miami, and he'd buy the flights the next day. Why did I stay? Why did I stay there? And why did I get married? And so, you sort of cognitively understand, okay, I didn't have a really good father figure, but you start the bilateral stimulation, and all of a sudden you start feeling it and healing it. And I'm like, oh my God. And so the session starts by asking you, what is the negative emotion that you feel out of your betrayal, or out of you feeling pain of being stuck in the wrong marriage? And they give you a list of negative emotions. So it'd be, you're unworthy, you're unlovable, you're not good enough, you're dirty, you're whatever happened. And so you're working on that emotion, and you process that emotion. So this is happening, and then they also ask you, it's like somatic experiencing, where are you feeling it? And a lot of the time with the bilateral stimulation, you start feeling it in your neck, or you feeling it in your abdominal area, or in your reproductive area, or in your head. And with the stimulation, you sort of let it go and you process it. And then when you do the reprocessing, which is the older part of you talking to the inner child and saying, you're okay now, you're safe, and you are worthy, and you are lovable, and you were special, you heal. And I have to say, Debbie, I would go into a session and I come out of it, and it was never an issue again.
Really? So how did you know? You would just feel the release or feel the healing going on?
You feel the release. You feel the healing. So they actually ask you, if from a scale of 1 to 10, how true is this? So I'm not worthy, because my parents didn't have time for me. I was left with maids. They never picked me up from school. They never went to any of my games. When I was sick, I was left alone. What was my negative emotion? Was that I was not worthy. And if I'm not worthy, I go marry the same person who keeps telling me that I'm not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of being heard. I'm not worthy of being seen. And unless you heal, I would have never attracted my husband now and feel like I'm worthy of being loved and worthy of being seen.
And that's so true that you just said that, because until it heals, you keep attracting the same type of person.
Right. So you leave the session and they ask you, in a scale of 1 to 10, how true does it feel that you're not worthy? And when you say anything up to 7 or 8, you might have to come back to the next session. Okay, let's keep working on this memory. Let's keep working on this issue. But I always left with an 8 or a 9 or a 10. Wow. And it was like, phew.
Yeah.
And I still do it. I do it anytime that I'm triggered with something small. I did it 3 weeks ago. In the summer, I lost a lot of my friends here in New York City. They left to the suburbs. They left to other states. And I was having problems with a friend, and it triggered me. Yeah. And why doesn't she want to be my friend? And I did a session when I went back to when I was in private school, and I was in the popular, and I was a goofy one. And I came out. The next time that woman didn't say hi to me, I'm like, her loss. But one thing is to say it, but to feel it,
right?
Like you don't feel it anymore. It happens to me with my husband, was playing with my 6-year-old Barbies for 2 hours, and I get triggered and I get angry, and I'm like, well, I didn't have a dad who didn't play with me. That's my issue. Did an EMDR. Now I see them play, and I'm like, oh, how cute, how lucky is she? You know what I mean? Like,
beautiful.
So yeah. I use it all the time, and I'm on a mission with my healing podcast to inspire the world to learn more about EMDR, to learn more. So, on Wednesday, I'm having a session with a psychedelics therapist.
Oh, wow.
Because psychedelics, I'm afraid to try it. I'm not sure if I ever will, but it does the same thing. It takes you back to when you were 6 and 8, and those things that you don't want to remember, and that your body and your soul and your brain has worked so hard to repress. There's no repression. Like, you're going back there and you're feeling the trauma again. and crying it out and reprocessing it. So
yeah, and people are having amazing results. I just want to be clear. We all know, we say for sure, do not do that alone. Make sure you are being
never.
highly supervised by someone extraordinarily qualified. So
Absolutely.
when you were saying going back and forth, whether it's eye movements or even just, touching back and forth, is there one way that you noticed helps more than another?
I love the tappers, and it was this little machines that they put in your knee and they tap back and forth. And for some reason, that worked like magic to me, where, I would start with a memory or a belief that I wasn't worthy. Immediately, it's bringing me back to memories that I even had forgotten about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now I've done it online with one of my guests, Carolyn Strassam. If anybody wants to try her, she's amazing. And we've been doing that, and it's been helpful. But I found that the tapper was slightly more effective.
I remember seeing something. It was it wasn't an app. It was like a little device. Is that
Yes,
what you're talking about? It's like a
yes.
little device,
These are the,
and it just it like clicks one side the other. But
yep.
I didn't know you put it on your knee. Were there two of them? I thought it
There
was
are
just
two of
one.
them.
Okay. Oh, I
There are
think I
two
know
of
what
them.
what's the name? It's called a tapper.
I think it's a tapper. Yeah.
Okay.
I can
Okay.
send you the information. Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, that's wonderful. Okay. And now what happens? I always try to get into the minds of my listeners and viewers, and someone saying, well, that sounds good, but I am just terrified to like let that stuff come up. What do you say to that person?
I'm not going to say that it's easy. And, when you're ready to do it, you got to find the right time, because you will be consumed for about a day. That days that you have EMDR are not the days you have something to do the next day, or some big,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
putting in the big, but it's really worth it. I mean, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. It sucks for 4 hours that you're going through and you're revisiting that terrible memory or that deep sadness that you felt, but the glory and the healing and the feeling that you're worthy, the feeling that you're lovable, the things that you can do after is worth every penny, and it's worth every tear and every heartache. And I felt it again and again and again. I mean,
That's amazing. And now think about it. You said 4 hours. Some people have been carrying around stuff for 40 years.
absolutely.
Right. So if you can let it go and release all of that, unearth it and release it and be free from, I had this visual of carrying around, hundreds of pounds of just stuff and being able to let it go and heal that little boy, little girl inside. What a beautiful thing to do. What do you want to make sure everyone knows as we wrap up?
Well, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we are all worthy, we're all lovable, and that whatever happened to us, it wasn't our fault. And every little child, I mean, I have a little child now, it's worthy of love and everything. And this is not about blaming our parents or blaming our caregivers. I truly believe that people do their best, as bad as it could be, just given their situation. It's about taking ownership of you, of who you want to be, of how you want to live the rest of your life, whether you're 60 or 70 or 30 or 20 or 45. So if you can heal that stuff, relive it one more time, and not live in the past, because that's why people don't love therapy, because it's not as effective when you go there for years and okay, he looked at me this way today. No, it's just super fast, super effective, and worth it.
I'm all about that. If you can knock out something that has been bringing you down all those years and truly heal it at the roots, which is the only place to
Absolutely.
really get it done, that's just beautiful. Karen, where do we go to learn more about you and the amazing work you do? And your podcast. Mention your podcast. It's a great podcast.
Yes, if you want to learn more about EMDR, I have 6 episodes there and other type of healing modalities that allow you to go deep. Go to the Healing with Karen Millon in any podcast available out there. And my Instagram is Healing with Karen. And my upcoming website, where you will be able to access all that information and resources to help you heal, it's at healing.net. Thank you so
beautiful.
much,
Oh,
Dr.
Karen, I
Debbie.
want to thank you so much. You gave us so much insight and wisdom, and I know in the betrayal community, EMDR is often spoken about, and I love how you really shed light on it, and I know it's going to be a healing modality that many people who've been betrayed can benefit from. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, EMDR is another tool in your toolbox to consider as you move through a painful experience. Remember, everyone has their own recipe of what resonates, so find out what it is for you. The only thing I wouldn't do is to do nothing. Stay in touch with Karen by going to healin.net, and we'll have all of her information in the show notes at thepbtinstitute.com/podcast. Here's my biggest takeaway. Dive deep with questions like the one Karen asked. 1. What is the negative emotion? 2. Where are you feeling it? 3. Imagine an older wise soul talking to your inner child for answers. 4. Also, rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10. How true is this? Which is also a great reminder to explore the work of Byron Katie. She has an amazing book that's been out for years along with a process. It's called The Work, and it's a series of questions that truly get you thinking and changing your thinking patterns. Like the show? Please subscribe, rate, and review. And of course, if you know of someone struggling to heal from a betrayal, be sure and tell them about the show. And if you haven't already, be sure to take the post-betrayal syndrome quiz, which you can find at thepbtinstitute.com/quiz. And have you checked out the PBT Institute membership community? Imagine everything you'd ever need to become your physical, mental, emotional best. Community support, certified coaches and practitioners you could schedule time with, daily classes on all kinds of interesting topics, curated experts teaching advanced strategies in the areas of health, mindset, spirituality, personal development. Imagine the most friendly, welcoming, and supportive place to become your best, all online. Nothing like this exists, and I am so excited to welcome you. Go to thepbtinstitute.com/join to learn more. Thanks for listening. Can't wait to be with you next time, and here's to your breakthrough.